Hey, welcome to tonight's chart focus. Tonight I'm going to focus actually on playing the news, and particularly playing the news to the short side, which seems odd when the market was up 80 points last night. But a couple of trades come up, and I'd been asked by a couple of viewers to talk about shorts. So just going to look at a few charts and trying to explain what I look for in short scalping stocks, especially on news. Alright, the first one we're going to look at is Bank of Queensland. This is a 5-minute intraday. This is Wednesday there, and this is today. It reported just before open, so profit announcements for the year. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, you may have heard me mention that with news plays, I like to not jump in straight away, but play a break of the initial range. So this actually gapped up. This is a 5-minute chart. Gapped up 1072. So these 5, 10, 15, 20. I think 20 minutes is probably 15 to 20 minutes is usually a good period to wait. Some of the faster moving ones, I might even look for a break of the first sort of 5 or 10 minute range, but I try to give them at least 10 minutes. So basically there in the first 15, 20, 25 minutes it's set its initial little range. So a high of 1072, low of 1066. Tested the 1072 again to the upside and then started to roll. So my entry, as soon as it breaks this 1066, I'm in short for a scalp with a stop back up here at 72. So assume you're in at 65, out at 73, 8 tick risk. Work out your position size based on how much you're prepared to lose. Based on a potential 8 tick loss, you might want to make it 10 tick loss if you want to allow for spillage. So basically, get our entry, and this one works a treat. Of course, they don't all work. I'm picking some that do what we want. Often many won't. As far as targets are concerned, I'll try and keep a trailing stop on this most of the way down. I don't have any specific targets that I look for. With this, the obvious first area would have been looking for support at yesterday's close, and I actually smashed straight through that, came up and retested it, and then dipped again. So there was pretty much no reason to get out of there. If it dumped through that, retested it, and then bounced, I would imagine I would have been out. But it actually kept going right down to 1040 before we found a bounce. As far as looking for a target with this, or some potential targets to at least keep an eye for a bounce, could probably, and I'll see if I can pull this area back a little bit more. That's too much. That'll do there. You could probably look at running Fibonacci's off the range of the day before. So we'll pull up our overlays here. I'm going to run a fib from the top of Wednesday to the bottom. We'll extend that down, and interestingly, 38, 50, 62 pretty much form the band where it bounced from. So 62 almost exactly. It's tried to punch through that 3 or 4 times at the bottom, failed, and then started to bounce. So now even if you hadn't used the fibs, you'd be watching a few of these tails where it had dipped and bounced fairly quickly. On a trailing stop, your out would probably be, once it started to stabilise here, I'd probably look at that bar there. We'll get rid of that for a minute. Probably that bar there, which is at 1043. A break of that, I'd be covering some at least. You've got a nice vertical scalp out of this. As a day trader, yes, we're trying to milk as much as we can out of some of these positions, but also just happy to take the quick scalp if you get a decent movement and move on to the next one. Now, if you'd missed this short, bearing in mind that the fibs were around there, you might have looked for the long entry there, and again, you could have probably popped 43 to, it's only 7 or 8 ticks, maybe not worth it, but there was a short scalp, a long scalp in there as well. Started to dip again towards close. Usually with report plays you get more than 1 day of weakness in it. They very rarely just have 1 day of weakness and then bounce. Now, in saying weakness for Bank of Queensland, I think it was actually still up for the day. So no, sorry, it was down 12 in the end. What am I talking about? But yeah, it wasn't down a heap, but we'd certainly be looking for now a break of this support here at 10.39 for some more downside. I actually didn't keep any Bank of Queensland overnight short, but probably should have, looking at that chart, because I've got quite a few longs still, even though I have lightened up, and that would have been a nice hedge to hopefully get some more downside to this. If the market's strong overnight, you might find this will bounce and then start to drift back down and retest these lows, who knows. But that's Bank of Queensland. Next one we'll have a look at is FMG. Okay, so there's the FMG chart. That's 2 and a bit days of 5-minute data. I'll just quickly go to the end of day chart. You can see it's been pretty strong lately. It's bounced from $5 back here in middle of September up to 650 odd, so pretty strong run. So it's alright. It's looking a little bit overbought, I would have thought, in the short term. Go back to that intraday. So it's gapped up early, dipped, not as low as yesterday's close, but had a fairly decent dip early, broke through the initial high, so it was starting to look relatively healthy, and then came out with its update here at 12:05. So we might just zoom in a little closer with this one. I'll go in just to the daily. So the news was out here. Now you can see previously the news, it had bounced off 660 twice, possibly 3 times there before the news came out. So pretty strong support at 660. That was immediately my first port of call for looking for a possible short. It actually gapped up a little on the news. I'm on a 1-minute chart here now. Gapped up a little and then dipped pretty quickly down to test that 660. So as there was quite a wall for memory at 660, so I actually got some as I was going. I didn't wait until 659. The stop is immediately up here, so it stops at 666 or something. Again, work out your position size based on that potential loss. And again, we got quite a nice little trade out of this. I actually covered some here as it started to bounce. There's a little bit of a false bounce here. Probably, well, obviously in hindsight, it was premature of me. Covered, I think, a third of my position there, and then another third down here as it started to bounce this time. Kept a little, was out, I believe, here, and I actually got back in towards the end of the day, I think, as it started to swing back around here. So I was in and out a little for some decent little profits. Again, looking for targets. Let's pull this back a bit. We'll go to a 5-minute. You could probably, and I haven't put the fibs over this, so I don't really know if it's going to work or not, but if we maybe take, let's see, that previous range there during the day, well, it actually retested, like it bounced off that early low anyway quite well, so that was a pretty obvious area to look for a bounce. Breach that. Now we might be looking at right back down to those 630 levels with a bit of luck. But I have kept some FMG overnight. Still finished up 8, so it wasn't a bad effort, but it was certainly in a downtrend for most of the day. Stops wise, probably around this high here for me. I won't give it right back up to here now. I'll keep it trailing stop on what I've got. So somewhere around this 650, 653 mark is where I'd look to be stopped out of that one. Okay, next one I wanted to have a look at is JBH, one of my favourites. Okay, that's a 5-minute intraday chart. Had news a couple of days ago, and I'll try and zoom this one in a little. Went too far there. Okay, it had an update here, chairman's address, and dumped pretty well straight away. As you can see, no real indication. I didn't get my sort of 10 or 20 minute range there, so didn't get hold of that short. So we've missed the short, and it's had a fairly decent vertical dip in it. So start to look for the long scalp. Once I get that vertical, I'll definitely be looking to try and scalp some of the bounce, because invariably they get a little bit overdone early. So again, we look for a possible entry in this. So I can zoom this up a little bit more. Very much like, I'd probably go to that previous day's range again and see if that gives us any hints, or the previous day's low back up to that high there. Let's see what that gives us. And pretty close, 1.38, 1.5, pretty much exactly where the bounce was. So if you do see stuff dumping like this, throw some fibs on possibly the day before's range or the most recent high and low before the dump, and you may get some idea where this thing may be looking for some support. So that was a pretty decent bounce in JBH after that dip. I'd be watching, I'll just take this off for a minute, I'll be watching the depth during this dump as well, and when it looks like, because a lot of this will be bot triggered as well, once it starts to look like the buyer bots are starting to build, seller bots are running out of steam, I'll jump in. So that hit a low of, we'll get rid of this, that hit a low of 1960 odd. Later on in the day it was 20, or today actually 2030. Later on in that day you could have got 2015 around that, something like that. Even if you miss this initial bounce, another fairly obvious entry on a breakthrough here. So hit 1990, dipped, kept making higher lows on the way back up. Once it broke your 1990 there, you could be long. Probably take this little low there as your stop if you wanted to keep it nice and tight. So it would have tested you almost there, but then broke through. If you were aggressive, you might have even added again on the break here, and you've got a nice little scalp for the rest of the day, whether you held on or not. I don't know. I took a scalp out of this, didn't hold any of it overnight. So that's JBH. Alright, well there's a few intraday scalps to show you. Hopefully they'll be of some use.